Something had happened, and the viewers were holding their breaths. At the same moment that Flaming Mountain 5th generation was spinning his knife, the war god number 1 revved up his knife. With a buzz, it turned into a windmill of steel as well. Being able to perform it at a moment like this was the skill of a master. No one else could replicate it even if the movements were the same. If it didn't have the understanding of a master behind it, the final result would still be akin to a dog trying to imitate a tiger. His expression turned dead serious. The opponent had learned quickly. He wasn't one step behind, he was actually reacting at the same pace. Was this a joke? Only a master could pull that off. The swirling flame in the Flaming Mountain 5th generation's hands suddenly retracted and became 1/3 of its usual length. The knife was immersed in the magma and there was a burst of energy from the mech. Boom! The magma had received some kind of stimulation and started to boil up. The magma started to flow into the knife, and it burned with intense heat. Upon seeing this, the fans from Mars became excited. This was their first time seeing this too. Flame Ronin was actually able to tap into the power of the magma. This was even stronger than an ultimate move. His power had indeed grown more terrible over time. This was definitely the mark of a strong family. At the same moment, the war god number 1 retracted the whirling steel knife in his arm and immersed it in the magma. In an instant, the extreme temperature of the magma ignited the surface of the knife. It sounded as loud as a waterfall. This was the flame-bending skill of the 5 elements. It can't be. The people inside the channel all held their breaths upon seeing the war god number 1's actions. They had no idea what was he trying to do. Were the both of them bugs? No one was more stunned than Flame Ronin. His opponent could actually wield the flames too. This was not a feat that just anyone could perform. Was he also a descendant of a famous family? Impossible. Definitely impossible. This must be a CT illusion. Buzz the Flaming Mountain 5th generation swung his knife behind him and the air exploded with a deafening bang. A jet of flame resembling a surging fire dragon came blazing out and rampaged its way towards the war god number 1 like an animal. This was an invincible technique, Dragon Flame Burst. It was the one and only. The fans that followed Flame Ronin from Mars couldn't believe their eyes. This was totally worth every cent. This was different from the usual abilities of Flame Ronin. This was the real Flame Dragon. This was the perfect flaming knife. Long live the invincible Flame Ronin. On Mars, his family held paramount power. At the same time, the war god number 1 mimicked what Flame Ronin was doing, but with a titanium knife. Both the commentators went silent. This was beyond their ability to explain. Players of this level would never appear in the realm of CT, but now here they both were. Faced with the blazing dragon knife, Wang Zheng gave a rare solemn expression. He was currently trying to understand the properties of the flames and had to have his own movement pace. He quickly swept his titanium knife backwards, but the flame dragon was nearly upon him. Whoosh! Wang Zheng swung his knife outwards and in an instant the flames disappeared. At the same time, his titanium knife shattered into tiny shiny fragments in a blinding flash of light. Flame Ronin was paralyzed while watching the blaze of light. He wanted to react, but it was already too late. Boom! The white light cut through the flame dragon and sliced through the flame mech without even stopping. Half of the mech was planted to the ground while the other half went flying in a shower of sparks. Skeleton win. The live broadcast was silent for a whole minute. Then an outburst of activities followed in the entire channel. Priority speaking was disabled, everyone was free to speak. That was insane. Totally crazy. What kind of trick was that? Was Flame Ronin really from a famous family? What technique did he use? The family considered the strongest on Mars, the man considered to be an invincible descendant in the Solar System Federation. How did this son of a famous family lose? And he had lost to a war god number 1? Looking back, Skeleton's attempt to replicate the flame dragon failed, but that blinding flash of light, what was that? High-frequency knife slashes. The fans from Mars did not leave the venue but rather started a noisy argument. This was not possible. This defied all logic. Within the CT Asia office, there was no cheering. Skeleton had won in an overwhelming manner. Knife of flame? No, that was the knife of death. Solin's outlook was calm and collected, but his trembling legs gave away his true feelings. This was a goddamn conspiracy. That bastard I Mighty, he thought that the status of the famous family was just for publicity. To think that it turned out to be true. The descendant of a famous family, fancy him thinking of that. But, Skeleton never could have imagined that he would defeat a son of a famous family. What a turn of events. As long as mistakes were not made, you would be fine. I Mighty would have to step aside this time. At the 6-star hotel, the famous descendant exited the CT cabin. His eyes had a confused look, and all sorts of emotions were running through his mind. Was this guy hired by the family? Impossible, there was no need for such trouble. Not a descendant of a famous family, Lear Kronos? To be honest, he had doubts before the match started, but this guy never warranted any further suspicions, and Lear could never have used the power of a famous family. The two beauties leaned in and were about to speak, but his device started to ring. This incoming unknown number overrode his turned-off screen. You failed, just come home already. There was no image, just an old voice. Old man, was it you who set this up? Having knowledge of the workings of the famous family and being able to achieve this null state, after thinking so much, the only logical conclusion was that this was the old man's doing. The opponent's last move was not only a perfect replica but also a superior version. That blinding flash of light was the ultimate variation of his move. Given his current level of strength, he should not have been able to perform this feat, but the opponent had done the impossible. If someone were to tell him that his opponent had never practiced it 1,000 times but rather picked it up after just one glance, he would never believe it. The opposite end went silent for a moment. That was not one of my guys. There is something about this man. We'll have to find out more on him. The connection was cut off after those words. He was taken aback. This opponent really did not have any association with a famous family? Then, he suddenly became excited. It seemed like it was about time he started on something. Sorry, beautiful ladies. I'm sorry that I might have to cancel on the dinner date tonight, he said with a burst of laughter and subsequently left without a trace. He was a descendant of a famous family but chose to drift around outside and cause a lot of commotion. To maintain the reputation of a famous family, he had to abide by the condition to return home upon losing. This was the agreement. It was his first time going home in these few years. His eyes were firm with determination. Wang Jung went offline immediately. That second battle had given him what he needed, especially on new training insights. Skeleton wanted to practice to gain new insights but was not able to gain any. However, this opponent had given him new insights, although they were a little low level. Thus, Wang Jung had to use a higher level lethal move. As for Flame Ronin, his status as a descendant of a famous family was put into the spotlight. Was he really someone from a famous family? No one could give a fixed answer on this, however, that ability he used did look similar to the legendary skill of a famous family. Then who was Skeleton? What sort of skill did he use? Famous families who had 1,000 years of history usually hid their secrets. The more they hid them, the greater the curiosity of the common folk. This family was more open to the public, thus they were the most talked about. The system would usually have released an analysis of the battle by now, however, it failed to do so this time, proving that this was beyond their understanding. Solon was equally brutal. I Mighty had hidden something from him, so of course he was going to get back at him. He actually had a hunch that Flame Ronin was indeed from a famous family, a high-ranking one too. This was indeed too forceful. I Mighty would surely scram this time. But he never expected the news to travel so quickly. His communication device rang. Solon, it's McLaren. I Mighty has submitted his resignation, and I have already approved it. With effect immediately, you are to be the Solar System Area's Executive Vice President. Of course, the video will be sent as soon as possible. McLaren's voice was clearly full of pressure. Yeah, I understand, Chairman. Solon was shocked. Such quick action and response. It seemed like Flame Ronin's status was quite high after all. These sorts of people were untouchable by mere commoners. There was little official coverage on what had happened, but this did not stop the audience and their speculation. This event spread like wildfire on Earth, but there were no news about it on Mars. The family had a long political reach, but then even they had their limits. Some said that was a family's hidden ability. Some said it was ability X. Wouldn't that mean that Skeleton was a user of ability X? There were many opinions on it, but no one gave a concrete answer. Within the core channel, Yan Xiaoshu was the happiest, but he was also the most careless. C King Hell, he wanted to shout, Skeleton was our brother. The best brother. He was the brother who went through thick and thin with us. Who else could do it but him? C King Hell. The live coverage ended. Comrade Young Deer was a smart man, but at the same time he was obsessed with collecting messages. That performance from Flame Ronin raised a lot of questions. Although he usually liked to show off, he had no intention of doing so this time. He could not afford to offend a famous family. He packed up his notes, stood up, and left. At this moment, two workers stepped up from the sides. One of them slammed his hand on the table and pulled out an empty milk carton. I just drank this. Mr. Deer, you seem to have forgotten something. This was planned by Solon. The field of view was also changed. Thus, the CT live coverage did not end but was rather changed to a close-up of Old Deer. The face of Comrade Old Trash-Talking Deer looked like that of a Rubik's Cube. It was a little white, tinged with a red shade. Then it became red tinged with black, finally turning green along with a little shade of blue. This was a dangerous sign. He had stopped drinking milk a long time ago. He would become queasy simply by seeing a cow. Commentator Deer, it is said that you are the most professional when it comes to casting. In front of all these viewers, you wouldn't be thinking of escaping, right? The worker gave an innocent look at Comrade Old Trash-Talking Deer. The colleagues behind them were totally stunned. Boss, the channel just broke 7 million. It went up by 200,000 in just a short moment. Even the staff members were speechless. The viewership had risen by so much, all this to watch Old Deer eat a milk box. Old Deer's expression gradually became more livid. The number of viewers kept on rising. Those who usually helped Old Deer with his dressing and makeup could not contain their amusement upon seeing the milk boxes delivered. There was a total of 380,000 milk boxes. Old Deer was usually very professional and dedicated, but facing this amount of milk boxes, his face paled. It cost $1 a box. Even if each box cost 50 cents, it would cost the audience a total of 200,000, even he only made 5,000 per show. C King Hell, he had even signed a 2-year contract. Tears flowed down from both eyes. Solon gently looked at the screen as he spoke. Take a close-up, pay attention to the eyes and corners of the mouth. With how dedicated he is to commentary, we must give good publicity to him. Add a few more channels. A group of staff members simmered with laughter. The boss was really too dark, too evil. This business was sure to make a huge profit, and even Comrade Old Deer himself did not think that this could have been so popular. 3 seconds later, PA. CT banner propaganda. Channel 1 is live broadcasting Young Deer eating a milk box. Be quick if you want to watch. Watching it live is better than watching a recording. Old Deer's face turned green, then white. The staff suggested a break unexpectedly, giving him 2 minutes. This was like sprinkling salt on the wound. $5,000 for this? What good was that for? It was not enough for a rehabilitation physiotherapy after the stomach washing from eating the milk box. That would cost $5,300 for just one time, and he would need to do it 4 times just for a single course of treatment. If he didn't do the physiotherapy, would he die? The Old Deer said that after washing his stomach, if he didn't do physiotherapy, he would get bloated after eating. This was because he needed to let the gas out. As a commentator, he needed to do live broadcasts, and even if he could endure the farts, others could not. When he saw the number of people in the live broadcast rising, Old Deer's heart dropped into the 18th circle of hell. Although eating the boxes didn't matter and he'd even get some money, what was happening? He was literally being sold off. He clenched his teeth and stomped. Old Deer began to eat up. Skeleton, I'm not done with you. Commentator Deer, drink some water, slow down, don't choke, the staff member on the side carefully said. While reading the data, he whispered, eat slowly, you can increase your popularity with this. Damn it. Old Deer's tears were flowing. At the end of the live stream, Comrade Deer immediately ran toward the parking lot with the staff member shouting, Commentator Deer, the boss said that in view of your professionalism, he will give you a bonus. Old Deer stopped at once. How much? $1,000. Poof, Solon, you old, stingy f***ck. I dare you to be a little more stingy. Commentator Deer, the boss said that a posh man like you would certainly not accept this money, so he is going to use it to buy juice for everyone. F***ck off. Every cent is mine. Wait for me to take it tomorrow, young Deer said, then he covered his belly and quickly moved into the car. With a roar, the maglev vehicle drifted away. Inside the CT room, after stretching a bit, Wang Jung's mood was very comfortable. Even if he were to go back to the room, he would also be idle. He couldn't do other things anyway, so why not just meditate over the battle with Flame Ronin? The opponent was very special. It was like he could feel the fire element, and it could be transformed into a very powerful attack. There was a certain difference between Ability X and this meditation, however, this was closely related. The only problem was that Wang Jung himself didn't have Ability X, so he couldn't determine the difference between them. However, it was indeed a harvest, as he had learned how to use the 5 elements offensively. Delicious food, good drinks, and a good night's sleep, the leisurely life was over. The next day, the army brought him back to Demon Island. The Demon Island surveillance room, Earth, Moon, and Mars 3 generals had gathered. After looking at the data just came back, they were looking at each other in dismay. After repeated checks, they were trying to verify the information. Gene score of 28. Accurate to the decimal, it was 28.45. Is this a challenge to my IQ? Lai relentlessly stared at it. He was very helpless. Although he saw the data before, he had always felt that that should be a mistake, or it was the wrong person. This was the main reason why they had sent Wang Jung for another test. The gene score was extremely scientific, it almost perfectly reflected a person's potential. From Wang Jung's performance, it didn't look like his gene score was only 28 at all. By the chance that the physical examination was mistaken, they tested again with the newest genetic tester. The result left the 3 generals' faces in distress. They just didn't know how Wang Jung would react when he saw this. The first reaction of Lai Wuqing was as such, "Old Meng, are you messing with the data? Earthlings often like to pull this trick after all. F***ck off, do I need to do this? He is from Earth either way." Meng Ao stared back. He felt a little bit of regret. This would mean that his potential was limited. No matter how he ascended in the future, it was unlikely for him to develop Ability X if he didn't have Ability X, that would be a huge limitation. Dramok's mouth had a faint smile on it. How could such a genius appear on Earth? He must have been from the moon. One Achilles was enough. Perfection was what the people of the moon sought. No matter how it turned out to be, it doesn't affect the next training program, Meng Ao said. This I agree with. After all, gene score is only a reference. We will follow our plan, Dramok said. Although his words were nice, he did not mention the plan of promoting Wang Jung into the captain's position. Lai Wuqing naturally would not agree. In this case, Meng Ao didn't have anything to say. After all, there was already Lear from Earth. Back to Demon Island, Wang Jung immediately felt a sense of homeliness. Compared to the comfort of the Paradise Island, the wild, dangerous atmosphere of Demon Island made him feel relaxed. Dear student Wang's methods of relaxation were not the same as normal people's. On the beach, there was a simple camp. When Wang Jung walked over, he saw someone dragging some thigh-thick wood, digging a foundation, and building a shed. To the side, there were 5 huts. The distances between them were not even. The roofs and the walls were made with the shells of the zerg. Only 3 of the walls of the huts were well sealed, and the front only used a plastic film. At this time, in the nearest 4 huts, many people were talking. When they saw that Wang Jung had come back, a lot of people rushed out from one hut. Compared to the moon, there was a lot less people here, but the atmosphere was more lively. On the moon, they did not know each other, so there was a lot of apprehension. After experiencing Demon Island's war, regardless of the origin of the participant, everyone was comrades, so they naturally opened up and got along. Wang Jung, you are back. Wang Jung, are you okay? By the way, I heard that the all nurses in Paradise Island are beautiful and that they are also very open to macho guys. Did you take a few days to get some numbers for everyone? A group of people greeted Wang Jung immediately. They were in the same team to kill the Queen Zerg. All of them chose to distribute their points according to their contributions. Needless to say, even if they were eliminated, they had scored enough points. These points not only were useful during the training camp, even if they eventually got eliminated, the points had great relevance to their future. It would give them bonus points to the various military academies' graduation points or the army's appraisal and the like. Really, all I saw was a group of men. Wang Jung was in distress. He basically got examined like a lab mouse. Holy crap, the military's position on Paradise Island is so low. Zhang Shan had bolted over, but after hearing this, he looked regretful. He was planning to injure himself in order to go there and enjoy the sights, hence he looked quite hopeless. Hee, maybe it's just bad luck. Everyone laughed and talked. They mentioned the battle from before every now and then, not only to talk about the battle at the nest, but also to talk about the lack of preparation when they arrived at Demon Island. Their respective colleges had a lot of competent brothers who were eliminated because of carelessness. Saying that, everyone felt sad. Of course, not everyone showed such closeness to Wang Jung. In fact, the reason why they could gather together was also because the team attacking the nest had built up trust, yet this kind of trust was like an alliance. In other social circles, at this time, there were a lot of discussions on the evaluation of Wang Jung. It was inevitable. In total, there were 2 teams attacking the nest. One was led by Wang Jung, and the fact that the Queen Zerg was killed verified that what Wang Jung said was correct. Some people said that it was luck, but who didn't know that luck was also a strength? Can Wang Jung even be considered a competitor? His performance on Demon Island was indeed commendable, but who wouldn't have a little luck? I have already checked him. His gene score is 28. This skill he demonstrated is probably his limit. I'm not demeaning him. The truth is, I quite admire him. With a gene score of 28, it's incredible that he can be selected into the training camp. This is a miracle. Data maniac Edison was fiddling with the Skylink in his hand. On Demon Island, the signal of the Skylink was shut down. Other than to look at the time or to be used as a flashlight, it was basically useless. However, his message clearly breached Demon Island's blockade. To be able to freely connect to the outer net was his small expertise. Network invasion and information warfare was his forte, and his circle of friends also enjoyed the benefits. Edison, are you sure? 28? Gene score of 28? Are you sure? The Data Emperor was called Edison. He was from the Republic of Karagal, part of the list of the 100 space cities. He was the only person from his college that wasn't eliminated. Then, with his talent in networking and information gathering, he had entered Saturn's satellite circle. Believe me, I even found his early news on the Earth network, which is to say, well, nothing. Looking at news of Wang Jung's suicide for love, Edison decided to forget about this sort of gossip. Although Wang Jung's gene score was low, his strength was still very strong. If he confronted him, that would really spell trouble. Oh, this is a bit interesting, but Wang Jung is really the type of people who puts in hard work. Although he does not have ability X, he can attack very fiercely. Hence, although his gene score is low, he still can't be underestimated. Well, if we look at his merits, there is actually one. What? He can cook, and I hear it's delicious. A burst of laughter erupted, but it was not to belittle him. On the contrary, they recognized Wang Jung was a powerful opponent. Although, some of them also felt that he was a little lucky and that he was not so strong. Wang Jung just smiled. Although those conversations were not very loud, the others did not mean to prevent him from hearing. However, to him, the gene score was just like the clouds in the sky, he didn't care about it at all. Jesus Christ, I'm hungry again. Since you were not here for 3 days, we also got to rest. It's a good view, but the food is too plain, Zhang Shan complained. These days compared to before were already like paradise, but the poor food was always a problem. Wang Jung laughed and rustled through the inside of his shirt. A pile of compressed cans from Paradise Island poured out. Don't you dare say that I didn't think of you guys, I snuck these back. Holy sh*T Wang Jung. You're a genius. The crowd became excited. Whoa, beef, fish, pork, all of them contained meat. Tears started welling up in their eyes. How long had it been since they last ate high-class food? Canned beef, yellowfin tuna, salmon, although they were canned, they were produced by Paradise Island, so these tasted the same as food prepared by top-quality chefs. Even the usually calm Meng Tian couldn't contain her excitement. She slowly swallowed her saliva. Although she could endure a fair amount of discomfort, she was not a saint. The meals recently had been too terrible. The food provided by IG felt like animal feed. Ladies first. Even at this moment, Zhang Shan did not lose his gentlemanly character. It was code red inside the monitoring room. The sensors had detected food from foreign sources. Su Yan stood embarrassed behind the three generals. I'm sorry, I was not strict enough with my checking. The three generals shook their heads and smiled. A little food was fine, as it would not affect the overall situation. It is a small matter. We choose soldiers, not robots. Su Yan bowed. His eyes were flashing, as he had indeed done his inspection. It was just that he was too lenient. Come to think of it, when he was doing a pat down on Wang Zheng, he moved around a little too much. Initially, he thought Wang Zheng was just not used to being patted down, but it seemed like he was actually playing a trick. Wang Zheng brought back a dozen cans or so. They were all compressed cans and had the height of half a regular can. After opening the cans, the food inside inflated, so one portion was sufficient to feed 2 people. No, we can't waste it like that. We've got to add some seafood to it and then heat it up, that would be the best. Zhang Shan came out to stop them after opening the can of yellowfin tuna. To finish it all now would be too wasteful of the seafood flavors that were wafting out. Yuan Yi took a peek at Zhang Runan. He also said, I'll go catch some fish now, let's have a barbecue tonight. Eating around the campfire was the best feeling. Wang Zheng had no comment. He did not want to eat. Although he had gone to Paradise Island for treatment, he felt like he was on a holiday. He had to think of the others who were suffering back here on Demon Island. He had enjoyed the few days over there. Forget about the physical examination of his bone marrow and all that. After the tasks were assigned, they went about catching fish. Wang Zheng went into the jungle and tried catching all kinds of game. He caught a weird-looking goat. It was pretty good luck, and he found a rabbit hole and caught 2 rabbits that didn't escape in time. Back on the beach, Masasi walked over with a creature in his hands. Can I exchange this for a can of food? Milo isn't used to eating wild animals. Sure. Wang Zheng was relaxed. Being able to kill the queen was largely due to Masasi being there. Although they were from different factions, they were not enemies. Night fell and a round moon appeared. This was artificial weather. In the middle of the camp, a bonfire was lit up. Sounds of singing started to rise up. It was Milo. Beautiful dancing, sounds of the song, these brought a calm silence to their hearts. It gave a feeling of perfection. This atmosphere under the moonlight was beautiful. Even though it was not around a bonfire, the people of the different factions started clapping. In this moment, everything else was forgotten. Everyone just enjoyed the peace and quiet after the battle. Milo and Meng Tian were this training batch's most beautiful girls. Their performances in the test were really good too. At the moment, Meng Tian was slightly better, as she was the one who killed the queen after all. The Frost Ability X also had everyone in awe. While Milo didn't perform as well against the brainworm, she had a witty sense of humor. Her elegant temperament had attracted a lot of male colleagues. She had a noble air around her, but she was still a relatable person. Once the song was over, the students of Mars Academy stood up. Since Earth has given us a treat, we, the people from Mars, should reply in kind. I'm going to perform a Mars war song for everyone. The people who arrived here were full of talent. Ma Hong of Mars did not perform too much, but that war song full of gusto captivated the attention of everyone. It had a masculine feel to it. 2 people had given a good opening, and all types of performances followed up after that. There was magic as well as performance skills. This was their own personal stage. Heh, I'm a person from Titan. I don't have any particular abilities, only a hard body. A shorty from Titan stood up. He was barely 170 centimeters tall as well as of a skinny build. A roar of laughter erupted. Aloman, you're not performing a comedy, are you? If you are a man, you've got to be hard. Everyone knows this. However, there are ladies here, so I guess I shouldn't demonstrate. A secret weapon must not be revealed so easily. Aloman of Titan laughed. At this moment, a schoolmate of Aloman stepped out from the side. He pulled out an alloy dagger while holding a tree branch. The wood on Demon Island was extremely dense and difficult to break, but with a gently cut of the dagger, the branch split into two. Aloman had a flash in his eyes, then he made a gesture and his comrades suddenly thrust the dagger at him. Pooched. The dagger went into the skin. It only entered a centimeter in and stopped. Oh! The comrades said while drinking. His body had tensed up. It showed that he had used all his strength. The dagger moved another millimeter in and stopped once again. Boom! This was a stone, it should be able to go in. There was thunderous applause and whistling. This performance was exciting. The dagger was pulled out and with the naked eye they would see the little wound created. It was healing rapidly, which showed the absolute control over the muscles. Of course, this was a sort of ability. The expertise in controlling the muscles would mean formidability in controlling a mech. They were young and healthy. Others wanted to one-up the performance, and soon all sorts of feats of strength were displayed like a league of heroes. Everyone wanted a piece of the glory with their different displays of strength. Does your academy have any performances? Suddenly, someone pointed to Luo Fei, who was eating and drinking and said that he incurred the most ire. After training for so long and being in the main force, this fatty never did anything. Performance? Yeah, we do. Luo Fei blinked, nodded, and then stood up. What is it? Show us. Haha, I'm afraid that if I showed it you guys, you would beat me up. Unless, you guys promise not to take any action afterwards. Luo Fei let out a shady laugh. Everyone wanted to know what skills this fatty had. The person that Lear fancied would not be a slouch. Achilles had his 8 stars surrounding him and Lear chose to bring along a fatty? This wasn't adding up. Sure, we promise. We'll not do anything after that. I need a prop, hope you all can cooperate, Luo Fei said as he walked around the circle of people. He picked up a baked octopus. Everyone was looking at this fatty. What was he up to? Ladies and gentlemen, please watch carefully, I am about to begin. In under a second, this octopus will disappear. The fatty had a serious look on his face as he gestured to the crowd. Suddenly, with a roar, this fatty opened his mouth wide and swallowed the octopus in one gulp. Everyone was stunned. What the F***ck? This passed as an ability? Yo, what the F***ck? This was merely an excuse to eat the food. Beat him up, a gentleman is true to his word. You promised not to take any action. The fatty glanced around. Eating quickly is my ability. It doesn't matter if you were impressed, I sure am with myself. However, within a second, a group of people were descending upon the fatty with fists. A promise? F***ck that. They were in the ocean for half an hour and this was the only octopus that was caught. Luo Fei dodged sideways and recovered in an impressive fashion. With a flash of his feet, he dodged all of that and ran away. The other wanted to give chase, but the fatty had disappeared. I remember, this fatty said that his ability was being able to escape, right? Someone muttered. Seems like so, everyone laughed and brushed the matter aside. Others soon started to perform as well. Amidst the sounds of the waves, the event reached a climax, and everyone started to sing the solar system's song of conquest. Even the fatty had returned. The sun, the origin of humans and the starting point of their conquests. Today, they would start from here and conquer the entire universe. Inside the monitoring room, the 3 generals watched solemnly. Even when the performances were in a lull, their attention did not waver. The more relaxed an atmosphere was, the more you could see a person's character. These punks have even started playing. Tomorrow we'll start a new phase of training. We originally intended to let them adapt for another day, but seems like this is no longer needed. Increase the difficulty. It is about time we really showed them. All 3 of them nodded in agreement. They had expected the youths to be a little more mature, but it seemed like they just wanted to sing and dance. In the early morning, the temperature was at its peak. This was due to the heat from the artificial sun. It was 3 times hotter than it was yesterday. Demon Island had changed from a cool autumn into a hot summer. Although they were worn out from yesterday's activities, everyone woke up early due to the heat. They were about to dip into the sea to cool off, but suddenly there came a sound of a spaceship from the sky. Boom! A small, tactical spacecraft descended from the air and kicked up a huge gust of wind upon landing. Su Yan was the first to step out, but after a moment, everyone's gazes looked past and behind him. 5 youths of different temperaments stepped out from the spaceship. They walked at different paces and each gave off a different feeling. They had their own unique charms, but one thing was common, and that was that each of them displayed absolute self-confidence in themselves. People from Academy X. This time the solar system was going to participate in the IG games. All sorts of looks were given. There were envy glances and challenging stares. But the most common were the looks of suspicion. Anyone able to enter Academy X was considered by all mankind in the galaxy to be a genius amongst geniuses. But no matter what kind of genius they were, no one felt inferior. This was a great opportunity for them to prove themselves, and what could be more glorious than defeating them? Wang Zheng looked at these 5 individuals with great interest. These 5 had the strongest ability X, and they were regarded as the future of the solar system. Walking in the front was someone with the uniform of the Moon's Moonlight College. He had a perfect body and the handsomeness of a god with a face that did not lack fortitude. He seemed arrogant and self-confident. His gestures all exuded a kind of strong feeling that no one could defeat him. It was a unique charm of extreme self-confidence, like the protagonist in those aristocratic novels. He didn't need to introduce himself, as just a glance and people would know that he was Achilles from the moon. The second one stepped out the spacecraft. She was a stunning beauty with a sexy hot body, like a flame. At first glance, it was like the spiciest pepper in the whole galaxy had bursted open in one's body. People were willing to burn everything they owned for her. Lai Xin, from the Martian Holy War Academy, and also the strongest descendant of the Lai family. The third one to step out was an old acquaintance Lear. His introverted pride revealed a sense of distance, but it seemed like he wanted to show his approachability. However, it was still only a bit different from the feeling from last time. The fourth person was ridiculously tall, 2 meters 20. The muscles of his body all tightened up. The strange thing was that his heavy body exuded a deep sense of war, but it also gave out a contradicting feeling of sensitivity. He wore the evergreen uniform of the Republic of Karagal, which illustrated his identity. He was Rastin from the 100 Great Space City, Republic of Karagal, the Azure Victory College. The last person came out. He exuded a gloomy feeling like an iceberg and was wearing a black uniform. The color of Pluto. One would never forget his appearance with only one glance. Everything he did was impressive. Even if he was just doing small actions, like playing with his collar, it would cause one to wonder what he was doing. Obviously, this was not normal, it was not even a reaction from your brain. But he wanted one to think so that the real thing one should be considering or paying attention to was ignored. He was Taros from the Hades Republic's Officers College. The 5 people stood in a row. In front of everyone, there were 5 completely different auras being exuded one after another, colliding with each other. Some ill-intentioned eyes weakened a little bit. They refused to comply, even knowing that the opponent was stronger than themselves. So long as they hadn't played against each other, no one would comply. Wang Zheng showed a trace of a smile. If he only judged them by their auras, these 5 people would not let him down. These 5 people were obviously accustomed to the attention of others, and they were not too concerned, because now was Su Yan's time. At this time, Su Yan coughed a little and cleared his throat before revealing a smile. Please introduce yourselves. Achilles, Moon's Moonlight College, I want to be the captain. Achilles assumed such authority as the first individual. His slight smile exuded supreme calmness, making it seem as if there was nothing that could baffle him. A simple welcome to everyone. His spirit bore down on everyone there. Lear from Earth's Zeus Academy. We can work together to create a miracle. Lear smiled and stood out. There was no special movement, but it still attracted all the eyes. Compared to Achilles' direct dominance, he was relatively peaceful. Mars, Lai Xin. Join me, follow me, I can take you to victory, but of course, I only want the elite, she said as her eyes stared at Zhang Runan. Unfortunately, Runan was not interested in her. Rastin smiled and said, hello, everyone. I am Rastin from the Karagal Republic, a beautiful space city. I'm very happy to participate in the IG selection. Rastin had the biggest body, but he was also the friendliest. Taros seemed to have laughed, but there was a feeling of discomfort in it. Hades Republic, Taros, follow me to live to the last. Although Taro's aura was rather cold, his words also held considerable self-confidence. After all, he had his title not for a day or two, and whoever opposed him would not end up too good. Wasn't there a saying? Piss off a gentleman, but do not provoke a villain. Su Yan clapped his hands. Well, introductions are done. From today on, Achilles, Lai Shin, Lear, Rastan, and Taros will join the training, and like everyone else, if they don't pass the test, they will get eliminated. Everyone's eyes had changed. They were finally going to train alongside the 5 aces. That also meant that the game had officially started. The 5 are the pre-elected team leaders. One of them will lead the qualified players to IG and win the honor for our solar system, Su Yan said. Report, Zhang Shan roared. Say, sir, do you mean only they can be captains? The rest were naturally curious. Zhang Shan spoke out the voices of everyone. Whether they could compete for it or not, he would take the opportunity to ask. Su Yan faintly smiled. Of course not, there are only 5 candidates. The captain can only be the strongest one. So now the official training begins. First do 1,000 push-ups to warm up. 1,000 push-ups. To the elite of the military schools, this was not a problem at all. Someone immediately got onto the ground and started to do push-ups. Wait, have I said start now? At this time, a group of soldiers on the spacecraft unloaded a cargo box. Go inside to take the special training backpacks. In the backpacks there are timers and counters. If you want to loaf on the job, you will be immediately eliminated. Everyone just laughed. Why did they need to loaf on the job for just 1,000 push-ups? They lined up and got into the cargo box to take tactical backpacks. Yuan Yi patted the backpack. He couldn't open it and couldn't see what was inside, so he asked, "It's really light, what was inside? Carrying this to do 1,000 push-ups? Isn't it the same with carrying no backpack?" They all curiously touched the backpacks. They were really very light. Very good, you have character. Su Yan smiled. The blue sea with mild waves, golden sand under the feet, a beautiful scenery, training here was like heaven. But soon, this sense of beauty was broken. All set. Although they had never set and lined up, with their elite instincts, in less than 3 seconds of time, the crowd naturally lined up to a 5-row neat square array in accordance with their height. Go straight ahead. Standard military order. However, they were facing the sea, they were going into the water. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. The sea was up to their calves, but they were still marching in 1s and 2s. No one hesitated, they stepped forward toward the sea while keeping the team neat. Until the sea water was up to their knees, they heard the order, halt, from the backpacks. The tactical backpacks were not just monitors, they also played the role of communication command. All attention, 1,000 push-ups, time starts now. Splash, everyone fell down to the sea, seabed push-ups. Interesting, but the sea was buoyant, so in fact, it made the push-ups easier. However, when this idea just emerged inside the minds, those light, tactical backpacks on their backs suddenly began to become heavy. The backpacks were soaking the water. At first they didn't think too much, as a few dozen pound was not a big deal. But not before long, they found that with time, the tactical backpacks became heavier and heavier until a certain point where it would stop gaining weight. However, it was not just absorbing the water. There was internal compression which allowed the bag to continue absorbing water. Under the huge pressure, it was difficult just to get your body out of water for a breath of air. The faster you are, the lower the weight of the backpack. All of you can understand that if you can't pass this little push-up test, you should go back to your mommies. Su Yan smiled and waved his hand. The backpack was like a mountain pressing onto their shoulders. There was one breath allowed for 100 push-ups before they desperately had to come up for a second breath. However, it was too late to breathe the third time. The tactical backpack forced them under the water, and once the wet backpack left the water, it would instantly become heavier. In this case, 1,000 times push-ups was far more than torture, it was simply the death god coming for their lives. However, no one gave up, even the weakest Aloman was also doing each push-up one by one. If a breath was not enough, They took a moment and took a second breath and another until their body had enough breath. Then they continued to do the push-ups. For the 5 aces, this level of training apparently did not constitute a problem. The 5 people had a calm expressions, and they kept the same frequency and only splashing sounds were heard from them. In the surveillance room, on the screens were the 5 aces. Formal training had began. For the 5 aces' performance in the next few segments, every detail was very important. The Solar System Federation was using all their power in this training. The red lights from those 5 backpacks, in the eyes of the 3 generals, would not have any problems. Others could do 100 push-ups with one breath, but the 5 aces at the maximum weight could do 150 or so, and only within a single breath, they could continue to do so. After all, they had graduated from Academy X some time ago. They also had to ensure that these 5, the future of the solar system, would not take things for granted. Ah, Lear's speed seems a little wrong. He fell behind, Lai Wuqing suddenly said. The counter was shown. Achilles was obviously in the lead. Lai Xin followed behind and only had a difference of 5 push-ups. Rastin and Taros had a difference of 10. This gap was not great. However, Lear had lagged behind Achilles by 20. They seemed to be similar, however, there was a difference. Meng Ao faintly smiled. He is only keeping his own rhythm, the others are chasing the rhythm of Achilles. Again, you Earth people trying to have low profiles. I really cannot stand that. How old is he? Is he not fighting now? When will he start fighting? It shows a lack of spirit. After all, if he doesn't show good performance, how can he convince his teammates? Lai Wuqing shook his head. Old Lai, maybe Lear still has some skills he didn't show. We cannot let down our guard. Dramok faintly smiled. Meng Ao shrugged. The winner is not yet known, and in another way, this is well thought out. Frankly, he still hoped that Lear could show off his ability, and keeping low-key at this time had no meaning. At this time, the 6th screen magnified and got cut over. This was the intelligent prescription of the surveillance system. If it detected milder muscle response, the absorption rate would be accelerated, or even reach saturation, which was the reason why Lear and his mates quickly saturated. For the others, the first one to reach the saturation was not Zhang Runan, but Wang Zheng. It's that kid again. Lai Wuqing blinked, picked up the coffee on the table, and took a large sip. The 3 all had a great question. Was this weight not enough to cause pressure to his muscles? It was just incredible. All 5 were users of Ability X and had strong spirits matched with equally strong bodies. This was a natural result of evolution. The current difficulty of the training was trivial to them. Just like the others who had recently awakened their Ability X, their body strength wasn't that strong yet, let alone one that had not awakened it at all. I thought this guy's genes were not good at all. Now isn't the time to be mean, guys. Blunt and straightforward, that was how the people of Mars spoke. This was not to say that they were careless, but rather they found this method of communication to be the most beneficial. The 3 of them vowed that it was an absolute no. Initially, they were about to give up on Wang Zheng, but this fellow was strong and ended up catching their attention. Seems like this time it is going to get interesting, as all sorts of unusual things are happening. So be it then, this guy may be able to give the 5 of them a bit of stimulation and bring up their competitive spirits. That is correct. Some form of challenge would be good for them lest they become too complacent and lose because of overconfidence. This generation from the solar system had proved to be a glimmer of hope, but they also understood that the others were not standing idly by. Trying and failing was better than not trying at all. If the 5 self-confident individuals were to experience a huge upset during this practice, it would no doubt greatly improve their mentality. Wang Zheng felt awesome. This sort of harshness was nothing compared to what he went through in the cube. It was a matter of life and death inside. But this sort of training was something that simulations could never match. This was not so much about the difference in the stimulation of his senses but more of a psychological thing. No matter how realistic the simulations were, they were but simulations. This was the real deal. His body was in constant contact with the sea. Every time the waves impacted his body, he felt his cells moving in sync with them. Becoming one with the environment, this truly felt enjoyable. Wang Zheng could feel that this sea could not really be called a sea, as there was something different about it. The sea and waves simulated inside the cube, no matter how realistic looking, would have a certain something missing from it. This certain something was the force of nature. Training was always done in simulation and then the skills learned were applied onto the real battlefield. But then again, only those who survived the harsh training could display their skills. Bonehead did not understand that simulations could only bring one so far, breakthroughs could only be achieved in the real world. On the screen, Wang Jung began to slow down. For a moment, he was faster than Lear and the rest. But then again, Lear and the others would never use their full strength on these sorts of things. Everyone was focused on their own matters, so they did not have the energy to pay any attention to the others. But Meng Ao and the others were getting more and more interested. There were certain types of people that normally would not attract any attention, but the more you paid attention to them, the more captivated you became. Because Wang Jung was doing the push-ups with only one hand, the other hand in the water was empty. This is how the people from Earth keep a low profile. They possess a quiet confidence in themselves, Meng Ao explained. Possessing strong abilities but never showing off and focusing on himself to further enhance his abilities, only by doing this would a soldier become stronger. Those who were on the same level as Meng Ao all shared a common appreciation for soldiers who were down to earth. But the more of a genius a person was, the more arrogant he became even if he seemingly had a calm exterior. There was something different about this kid. Achilles was the first to finish. The time recorded was 8 minutes and 31 seconds. Lai Xin was slower by 5 seconds. The reason being was she had entered the water a little slower than expected. Having a huge bust size hindered her training occasionally, and she had thoughts about having their size reduced. On the contrary, she decided against it as this was a form of admitting defeat. Rastin and Taros finished at the same time. They were 10 seconds behind Lai Xin, but this difference in timing proved nothing. Looking on, Lear had not finished yet. Taros's eyes lit up and he let out a meaningful smile. In exactly 10 minutes, Lear stood up. The counter displayed an exact 1000 integer. His tactical backpack started to pour out the seawater that was sucked in. Pretty good pace. 10 minutes as expected, the best result of the first round. The underwater push-ups with the tactical backpack was one of the training regimes of Academy X. This was not their first time attempting this. The best results were under 10 minutes, the second best were between 10 minutes and 15 minutes. Beyond 15 minutes was considered to be just merely a pass. What about failure? Students of Academy X did not get results like that, neither would any of them ever receive this result. Any such individual would have been removed even before the training started. Inside the monitoring room, the display on the 7th screen was enlarged. It wasn't the backpack reaching its limit but an alarm. 10 minutes without coming up for air, skin breathing, it is an alternative ability. It is not prominent and is even considered to be a weak ability. However, under certain circumstances, it is very useful. This young seedling has potential, he has completed it too. In 6th place was someone from Titan. He was 180 centimeters tall, but this was considered to be normal in a circle of elites. He was the person who performed the body hardening ability during the bonfire night. His name was Stalker. As he stood up, he attracted the attention of the 5 others. 11 minutes, this was considered acceptable at Academy X. A buddy from Titan? Rastin laughed and walked over. Stalker laughed and nodded. He could use skin breathing while underwater. He originally wanted to snatch first place, but it seemed like he did not make it. The 5 of them who did better were monsters, but then again, he did not immediately accept Rastin's invitation. Those with ability had to choose their partners carefully. This was the most important part when it came to being a captain. The ability to qualify for the IG competition rested on the ability to discern a strong teammate from a weak one. Choose wrongly and it would not end well. Rastin didn't mind. Conversations were free. Attitude was the key, everything had its value. One after another, more people came up. Most of them were from Mars and the 8 stars of the moon. When Milo stood up from the waters, she attracted a lot of looks. However, when she stood behind Achilles, everyone's eyes shifted to the floor. The number of gazes that fell onto Meng Tian was even more in number. This was a perfect woman in an imperfect place. She was a little cold to the others, but this was because of her ability X. There were rumors that her ability had the property of ice and thus the colder she was towards a person, the more she felt affection towards him. But of course, this was only directed to the one she was attracted to. Lear gave her a faint smile. Meng Tian calmly wiped the water off her face. Lear did not mind Meng Tian's attitude at all. Everyone had their preferred way of doing things. The special thing about Lear was his self-confidence. It was different from anyone else's. Wang Zheng finished a little late, 16 minutes and 35 seconds. In the end he had to use both fingers. He originally intended to only use one but found it to be too slow. People had their limits after all, but it would be amazing if a person could surpass it. The last person was welcomed by everyone, the fatty Luo Fei. The fatty stood behind Lear and whispered softly to him, "I ate too much yesterday, so I had a stomachache this morning and did not have the time to settle that." Everyone moved away immediately. Bloody hell, he hadn't released some weird stuff into the water, had he? Just when everyone thought that they could stop for some rest, Su Yan appeared again, smiling. "No bad, no one actually got disqualified. Next up you'll run around the island for 10 laps. If you do not complete that, you will not receive food and sleep." Even those students who would score an 8 or 9 on physical tests immediately turned pale. Running was nothing. 10 laps around the field was also nothing, but running around the island. Everyone looked up at the blue sky and finally understood why this place was called Demon Island. The demon occasionally gave you a few minutes to do as you saw fit, but the price to pay was extremely heavy. Everyone soon became aware of another serious problem. This island wasn't large, but it wasn't exactly small either. 1 lap might have been okay, but 10 laps? Holy sh*t, how long would it take? Not to mention a day, could they even complete it in 3 days? What sort of training was this? It was more akin to abuse. There was no way they would be able to complete this. It has already begun, the map is displayed on your bracelets. Oh, and I almost forgot, you can cut corners, but that lap will not be counted, Su Yan said, smiling. It was a good feeling watching everyone suffer. Achilles smiled. "Sir Su, this task is nothing to the people of the moon, let's go." It was obvious that Achilles had conserved his physical strength. Milo and the others followed behind him with smiling faces. Initially, there was not much of a gap in between the students, but as the training stretched on, so did the distance between them. This was a test of endurance. The people from the moon headed out quickly. On the Mars side, they too smiled. "We the people from Mars have never lost, let's head out as well." With that said, a group of people headed out with Lai Xin. In a short time, they had overtaken Achilles' group. The desire to win was the strongest point of the people from Mars. Except that these 10 laps were not only about speed, endurance was equally important. Everyone had set out. Lear did not pay any attention to Luo Fei and set off on his own. Luo Fei had a sad expression on his face. This test was going to take a lot out of him. "Fatty, with that sort of look on your face, you might as well give up now. At least you will keep your reputation intact." The people who passed by would ridicule him. "We better get going too," Wang Zheng said. He could feel that Meng Tian, Zhang Runan, and Zhang Shan were a little tired. The training here was indeed a little inhumane. Meng Tian had strong abilities, but in the previous test, she had not performed well. Zhang Runan performed about the same as her. She had excellent abilities, but she lacked sufficient daily training. She could perform well for short periods of time, but once caught in a fierce battle, her performance deteriorated. This would be a tough battle for her. "Let's go, we've already come too far to give up." Zhang Shan was really tired and his breathing had not stabilized yet. Out of everyone, his abilities and foundation were the worst. "You can do it," Zhang Runan said suddenly, surprising Zhang Shang. "It can't be, manly sister Runan is actually praising me." "You consider this praising? I'm afraid that you're going to fall behind," Zhang Runan said. "Haha, the menfolk of Aries would never be afraid. F***ck, we've already been disqualified too much. We need to see this until the end no matter what." Zhang Shan beat on his chest, and the 4 of them went on their way. Wang Zheng took the lead while the other 3 followed behind. The person leading the group should have been even more tired than the rest, but Wang Zheng, was actually not tired. Their speed was not fast, but Wang Zheng did not dare to go any faster, as going faster would not help. Instead, he would only drag Meng Tian and the crowd down as they could not maintain a quicker pace. He could feel the breathing of the three other people. When their bodies recovered from the warm-up stage, they would be fine. On the screen, the rest of the participants sort of formed into groups while moving forward. The speed of the Martians also decreased over time. Half an hour was enough to let the passion die down because there were still 9 laps remaining. In contrast, the people of the moon had maintained a stable speed. Achilles was like an eternal light lighting the way ahead for the crowd. The same Achilles was also in control of the cadence of the group. Lear had performed disappointingly by running his own race. Leadership, which was the focus of the training, could not be seen from him at all. What was the use if he was fast alone but left his only assistant, Luo Fei, behind? The fatty was now in last place as his speed was really not fast. Rastin led the people from the Republic of Karagal. Taros acted the same way Lear did, moving forward alone. Soon he rushed to the front of everyone, evidently planning to take the lead. Zhang Shan, adjust your breathing and stabilize your pace by reducing your breathing speed by a little, Wang Zheng said. Zhang Shan smiled. I know, but how the F*ck can we finish this running exercise? We just began and you are discouraged already, Meng Tian said. Being looked down on by a beauty was absolutely not okay, it was detrimental to the dignity of 007. Do not worry, I will definitely not be the first one to fall. The island's path was not easy to walk on. As the 4 people kept their speed, 3 groups were formed. Taros led the first group, Wang Zheng and his friends led the second group, and Luo Fei led the third group. The Titan and Europa participants were not good at running, so endurance training like this really gave them a headache. According to the map guide, an hour later, Taros reached the beach. About 5 kilometers across the sea, Taros looked back behind, and his mouth showed a trace of sneer before he jumped into the sea and swam to the other side like a flying fish. The second group of people that arrived were the people of the moon led by Achilles. Boss has no new tricks. We ought to take this opportunity and kill Taros now. We cannot let him show off in front of us, Dong Xiaosha said. Achilles slightly shook his head. This is just the beginning, there is no hurry. Little Dong Dong, do not be worried. Taros cannot run away from the boss. Just make sure you do not fall behind. Pai Xiaoshu laughed. Do you want a beating? Do not call me Little Dong Dong. Alright, Little Dong Dong. It was clear that the participants from the moon were quite relaxed. You two, stop making trouble and get into the water. The only girl in the team, Milo, was always very loved. Milo, do you want to go skinny dipping? I promise I will not look, Otto's ridiculed. When he finished speaking, he got thrown directly into the sea by a few people. Otto's emitted a sharp cry. You group of people care about girls more than an innocent life. Murder, beat him up. Milo gave the order as a group of people chased him into the sea, eager for a bruising. This training was absolutely draining for some people, but for some others it was a metaphorical holiday. The people from the moon used this relaxed atmosphere to reduce their muscle tension and exertion from the previous training. Reducing energy consumption made it easier to deal with the exertion from the warm-up, allowing them to recover quicker. In the sea, the 9 people became very calm as they swam towards the other side. When Achilles and others dove into the water, Lear had just arrived. He stayed for a while and soon disappeared into the sea without a trace of a splash. The Martians led by Lai Xin also arrived. Aren't we going to chase them? Ma Hong asked. Do not worry, if you rush forward too wholeheartedly, your spirit and motivation will weaken if you are unable to endure, Lin Ruofeng said with a smile. Lai Xin showed a pondering smile. These guys want to play dirty. Do they really think we Martians have no brains? I'd like to see what they want to do. Playing dirty? Carl got confused. Taros is a real villain, but it's relatively simple to defend against this kind of person. Rastin is a rare gentleman. He is generous, and he's not our enemy, Lai Xin said. Then Lear and Achilles are problems? Carl was a little puzzled. With the moon people's personality and strength, it seemed that no one was their opponent. Carl, you are too naive. If we can see Lear scheming, then comparatively, Achilles is a schemer that has deceived everyone otherwise. Lin Ruofeng laughed. As the military assistant to Lai Xin, just like Milo's role, He had a detailed understanding of their future opponents. Just like Ruofeng said, Lear's and Achilles' styles in doing things are different. When Lear does things, you will not know what he wants until the end. When Achilles does things, even if you manage to guess what he wants to do, you cannot stop him, said Lai Xin. The Martians did not think Lai Xin would give these people such a high evaluation. Soon, Lai Xin laughed. To know one's own strength and the enemy's is the sure way to victory. The strongest group is still us Martians, and Lai Guang will be back soon. When everyone heard this, they all got a shock, for the Lai family had an outcast. They heard that in Academy X, this person had beaten up a teacher and was expelled from the school. He had been rebellious since childhood, and in other places, he might have been beaten up so much that his mother could not recognize him, but in Mars, it was like another matter. The family let Lai Guang grow without restraint. Lai Xin jumped into the water like a mermaid. Her clothes stuck close to her body, showing off her unparalleled body. This sight pumped up the strength level of the group of Martians. Beauty could improve adrenaline secretions to a great extent. It was like of injecting half a tube of stimulant. An hour and a half later, Fatty arrived at the beach. Looking at the sea, Fatty's face seemed as though he had eaten a bitter gourd. What was more painful than running was swimming. He would rather burrow himself in a hole than get into the water. But in this stage, he was clearly not allowed to burrow into a hole. Fatty stamped his feet and bit the bullet. He jumped into the water from a small cliff and began to swim forward. This little Fatty is favored by Lear, but he's too weak. Lai Wuqing was dumbfounded on the battlefield. They didn't need people who could only run away. Meng Ao was also a little embarrassed. Had he known that such a shameful person was here, he would have just eliminated him. He didn't know what Lear was up to, but he acted as he pleased. Wang Zheng isn't doing well. He is too caring towards his team, and they're dragging down his own speed, Dramok said. The team or the individual? This had always been a multiple-choice question with no fixed answer. The other three people's physical strengths were very mediocre, especially that Zhang Shan. Although he was trying to follow, he was too slow, slower than the two girls. He did not learn to cut his losses early. Lai Wuqing laughed. Zhang Shan's physical proficiency was too low. It was definitely due to luck that he could actually reach the second stage and not be eliminated. Wang Zheng and others who were in front constantly got caught up too, and soon the Europa College led by Yuan Yi also caught up. Maiden, it's a fate that we meet again, Yuan Yi said. Song Li also smiled. Their performance in the kill of the Zerg Queen was also very praiseworthy, and they got a high score. As long as they made no mistakes, they could get promoted for sure. Zhang Runan stared at Yuan Yi but did not pay attention to him. Folks, I will go ahead. Fight on, Yuan Yi saluted. After all, he represented the Europa College, otherwise, he would have joined Zhang Runan. Boss, that Zhang Shan seems to be dying. He can hold on for at most 2 more laps. If it were me, I would simply let go of him and save the team. Though the voices of those 3 people were quiet, they still spread to the ears of Zhang Shan, and it was a great blow towards Zhang Shan's self-esteem. You 3 go ahead, I can do it alone, Zhang Shan said. Meng Tian faintly looked at Zhang Shan. He couldn't even take an insult. How did he get into the physics department with this IQ? Zhang Shan, there are 10 laps, we don't know who will laugh at the end yet, Wang Zheng said. And Zhang Runan was simpler, she directly kicked Zhang Shan in the butt. I will kill you if you keep nagging. She was really a domineering, super manly sister. Zhang Shan clenched his teeth and his heart felt warm. F***ck. Even if he would die from the run, he could not drag the team down. Zhang Shan had passed the first stage of fatigue and was reaching the second stage of fatigue. Most of the other people were still in the first stage of physical fatigue and were just fine. This was the result of long-term training. With the passage of time, a terrible thing happened. Someone had been lapped. After the completion of the first lap, the crowd did not have any sense of joy, because there were 9 laps to go. **T, simply endless running. But at this point, no one would be a sucker and quit. Luo Fei once again came to the beach. He was still in last place when he suddenly felt a figure pass by him. Trash. The shadow that rushed by left a single word and disappeared. It was the second lap for Taros. Fatty bitterly smiled. Jesus Christ, what were these guys made of? They didn't need to rush forward so quickly, what were they anxious about? Not long after, Achilles and the 8 stars appeared. They too were quite surprised to see Fatty. They then realized what had happened, they had lapped him. It was really quite a miserable scene. People who could come here were all prideful, so getting lapped before running for long was really shameful. Hey, little Fatty, you are running so fast, which lap are you in? Ottos chuckled. After living on Mars for some time, Ottos had also picked up some bad habits. Masasi frowned. Keep quiet. Haha, just a joke. But I really need to know, when did King Lear's senses become so bad that he would choose this person? This is really funny. The participants from the moon passed by. Achilles did not even look at him. It's been a few years since we last met, but Lear has become weaker. His senses have become worse. Dong Xiaosai was also not polite. After all, Lear was his former main competitor. He was a bit surprised by how fast he fell. Luo Fei stopped, then his body sank into the water. Fatty was not afraid of ridicule. To be accurate, he was laughed at ever since he was young. Laughing even made one 10 years younger, it was not a big deal to be laughed at. But he absolutely did not allow anyone to talk sh*t about Lear. Fatty once again emerged from the water. His eyes were filled with something strange. He cut a path through the water and rushed out. And behind him, Lear floated up, his eyes never changed. The first time he saw this Fatty was when the latter was being beaten up. The reason was simple. The more fat one has, the more comfortable they are to hit. Lear had been at the pinnacle since a young age. This sort of man like Fatty was not worth his time, much less the effort to do anything to him. According to Lear's family, the weak must be shunned and this world belonged to the strong. But something weird happened that day. Fatty was constantly being beaten up, but he never made a sound, he even smiled the entire time. That smile stirred something in Lear's heart, thus he took action and broke someone's limbs that day. Lear paid no more attention to that matter, but what followed after was weird to him. No matter where he went, this Fatty would always show up. This Fatty had even qualified and entered Zeus College. Furthermore, he was an Ability X user. One with a truly fearsome Ability X. As Ottos swam behind his group, he was relaxed and hummed a tune. This sort of test was not challenging at all. That Fatty was pretty funny back there with his face looking like an airbag. Suddenly, Otto's face froze. Something had grabbed hold of his leg and pulled him underwater. He was about to open his mouth but found out that he did not have the strength to. It was as if something had drained all of his energy. Just before Ottos fainted, he heard a cold, sinister laugh. At this moment, a sound boomed from the sky, Ottos eliminated. The people from Earth stopped. Achilles had a grave expression. He had been swimming in the front about 10 meters away from the others. This was considered a safe distance, but someone had actually committed sabotage under his watch. F***ck. Who dares to mess with us? Dong Xiaosha spit angrily. Seems like we were too careless. Someone could not endure anymore. Achilles grew angry. Let's carry on. It would be impossible to search for a person right now, and perhaps the opponent's intentions were to let them speculate as to what happened. Otto's elimination reminded the others that although this was merely a run, it did not guarantee their safety. Any mistake would cost them. They did not know who actually had the audacity to strike at someone from the moon. Was it Taros, or Lear, or someone from Mars? Seemed like the team captain's battle had started. Everyone had suspects in mind, but no one thought of Fatty. While Otto's first thoughts after waking up were that he actually trusted that damned Taros. That sinister laughter could not have come from anyone besides him, it must have been him because Ottos had called Taros ugly. Inside the monitoring room, Dramok had a pale expression. Meng Ao, your guys clearly have flagrantly disregarded the rules. Meng Ao did not speak but merely shrugged. A little ruthlessness did not matter. The person has already been eliminated, so why should the Earthlings be eliminated? To think that the Fatty was a wolf in sheep's clothing. He actually managed to sabotage Achilles' team right under his nose. His ability is worthy of being considered for the main force. Spoke Lai Wuqing with a strong ruthless smile. He appeared to be helping Meng Ao but at the same time stabbed him in the back. Meng Ao did not say anything. Having witnessed what had just happened gave him quite a deep shock. This fatty was actually incredible. Up until now, he had only displayed his skills of perception, sneaking, and the ability to expose weaknesses. One-on-one, Otto's was not afraid of him, but when it came to underhanded tactics, Otto's was not his match. These were the qualities of a top-quality recon scout. With this event, the pace of the training changed. The battle between the team captains had begun. Just like everyone had anticipated, it was hopeless to complete the training in a day. When night fell, the most anyone had completed was 5 laps. Their speed was getting slower and slower. This training had a disgusting condition. No one was allowed to stop for more than 10 minutes or the lap would be voided. Zhang Shan could not run anymore. He could not feel his legs anymore and he did not want to be a burden to Wang Zheng and the others. Never in his wildest dreams could he imagine that Meng Tian and Zhang Runan had better endurance than him. Users of Ability X did indeed have better recovery speed than normal people. Wang Zheng was an exception, that monster. Perhaps I am more suited to doing research. This thought flashed in Zhang Shan's head just before he lost consciousness. He had endured until he actually fainted. After an unknown amount of time, Zhang Shan regained consciousness. He felt himself moving, and upon opening his eyes, he discovered that Wang Zhen was actually carrying him on his back. There were no rules that stated a person could not carry another. Then again, the person who set the rules never anticipated that someone would still have the strength to do so. The 3 generals were laughing with tears in their eyes. Was this F***CKER really still human? Despite carrying another person, Wang Zheng did not slow down at all. He was a living monster. Both Meng Tian and Zhang Runan were stunned. When they looked at Wang Zheng's face, they saw the look of confidence and trust. Initially, Meng Tian did not know how she felt towards Wang Zheng, but now she finally understood. Whenever he was around, she did not feel cold and distant, but rather warm inside. Zhang Shan could feel tears welling up. F***C King Hell, he, as a man, was actually getting emotional. What a shame. Put me down, Wang Zheng, I'm able to carry on now, Zhang Shan said. I'll carry you for some distance, Zhang Runan said. She was better at carrying the heavy man. No worries, I can make it. Ouch. Upon getting off Wang Zheng and trying to stand, Zhang Shan discovered that his legs had no strength as he collapsed onto the floor. Zhang Runan held him steady. You overexerted yourself, so you'll need some time to adapt again. Sorry to have burdened you guys, are you a man or not? Saying such sentimental words. Don't let others know that you are one of us, Zhang Runan said. Both Wang Zheng and Meng Tian laughed. The manly sister still had some fight in her. After half an hour, Zhang Shan's body had adapted to the strain. He had pretty good physical strength and hence could recover quickly. Yet then again, Wang Zheng had carried him for almost a quarter of a lap. No one knew who had committed the sabotage and gotten Otto's eliminated. Everyone was on alert, but it also took too much energy. If they bumped into another group, they would just keep their distance and pass by quietly. The 3 generals had no intention of watching the participants progress through the entire night. This much would do, and they would come back and view the results tomorrow. Time slowly ticked by, and with Wang Zheng's and Zhang Runan's help, Zhang Shan had completed the 7th lap. It would be dawn soon, and Taro's, who was in the lead, had only managed to complete the 8th lap. It was obvious that he had slowed down, as half of his attention was focused on staying alert. No one knew who the saboteur was, but they knew he was ruthless. Each person that the saboteur eliminated would benefit him greatly. Taros suspected that the saboteur may have been Achilles himself. He might have intentionally sacrificed Otto's to let the others stop and check up on them. As long as Achilles disadvantaged the others, no one else would be able to challenge him. He would be able to sweep aside all that stood against him. Some people suspected Taros, some suspected Lear, and others suspected Achilles. There were some who even suspected Wang Zheng, but no one ever suspected the fatty. Without anyone else knowing, the fatty had completed his 7th lap. He was in the middle of the pack, neither too fast nor too slow. But then again, the fatty was actually controlling his pace. According to Lear, characters like Luo Fei needed to be cultivated. Luo Fei might have even been a little bipolar. Bumbling around on one hand yet once triggered would become horrible and insidious. But the one thing about Luo Fei was that he had loyalty. And to this regard, he had absolute loyalty to Lear. The servants of House Kronos valued loyalty above all. It was the number one value, as well as the second and third. Compared to other weak fatties, this fatty was sufficiently ruthless. But to Lear, he was not ruthless enough. Had it been Lear who committed the sabotage, he would have totally destroyed his opponents. But of course, the risks had to be proportionate to the rewards. Time was running out and he had no intention of giving up first place. It did not matter what happened during the start, the burst of energy at the end was what mattered. During the competition, Lear constantly monitored the opponents that were considered a threat. Achilles was too self-confident, Rastin was too positive and he also lacked ambition. Taros could be ignored. Wang Zheng. He was naive, but he actually could carry a person and run at the same time. Only he could have come up with such an idea. Wang Zheng cared for his teammates, and with that he displayed the spirit of Ares College. But in order to save a piece of trash, he had not only wasted precious time, he also dragged down his entire team. Those who did not have the potential should just give up. But then again, this could work out too. Lear now knew Wang Zheng's weakness, and it would provide an advantage in combat. However, Lai Xin was a woman, and that was awkward. Lear was good at dealing with men but not women. But he firmly believed that women had no place in this sort of field. After having completed his personal objectives, Lear started to increase his speed. Achilles had the same conclusion, neither of them considered Taros to be a threat. Ruofeng, you lead the team. I am about to head off soon, Lai Xin said. It was about time she made her move. Don't worry about us, Captain. Lai Xin's expression changed from one that was fatigued to one that was full of energy. She then instantly accelerated. This was nothing usual to the people of Mars, there was nothing that the Lai family could not do. There are only a few laps left, Wang Zheng, run in and I will take care of Zhang Shan and not let him fall behind. You go on ahead, Meng Tian said. She continued to maintain her calmness. It was obvious that Wang Zheng had been conserving his strength. Go on ahead, Wang Zheng. Don't worry, the people of Dormitory 007 are not cowards. They would never give up, Zhang Shan said. This was the true meaning of brotherhood. He had been on the verge of giving up several times but held on because of everyone's encouragement, although Zhang Runnen's methods were more rude. Wang Zheng nodded. Then I'll make a move first. Having said that and with a huff, Wang Zheng's silhouette faded away. The three of them were left stunned. What is this fellow made of? He still had so much strength. In fact, there were about a dozen people who had started to speed up. In this sort of marathon battle, you had to maintain a decent performance in the first half, but the latter half was the critical part. The latter half was also a test in itself because if you exerted your strength too early, you would never maintain it until the finishing line. Exert too late and it will definitely affect the end result. Taros was in the lead. As he got closer to victory, his mood brightened. The first place holder of every event would be recorded. In every subsequent performance review in the military, this would definitely come in handy. On top of that, he would give a good image of himself to the generals, and it goes without saying that his status within the Hades Republic would be further elevated. But his map showed that there were 10 dots that had increased their speed. Some had even accelerated past his current pace. It seemed like the others were not content with his position and were looking to overtake him. Currently, the fastest lap timing still belonged to him. The children all sped up. I thought they had no ambition. These little guys are more mature than we were. When the three generals were young, they were also high-spirited and wanted to dominate the world. They were really brilliant, but ultimately they did not break through the scope of the solar system. Instead, they had experienced a variety of things. Richness and power, vanity and grudges. To this age, the dreams of these old men had in their youth were the most sincere. Since they could no longer do so, they wanted their inheritors to be able to complete them. Rush ahead at full speed. Taros accelerated. Victory was so close. Achilles accelerated. The sun god's self-confidence was clear. Although he had fallen behind a little, he could still get first place. His top speed was truly amazing. Lai Xin still looked tender and beautiful. It did not look like she had been struggling for an entire day and night. She too was running forward at full speed. Lear also sped up. He was very fast, but with his current speed, it seemed as though he wouldn't catch up. The only one behind them was Rastin. Rastin's plan was very simple. He was not the fastest, so even if he accelerated, he wouldn't be able to be first. In the first group, Titan's stalker also began to accelerate, and his extreme speed in the water allowed him to maintain his lead. His goal was to reach the top 5. As long as he could get the position of a reserve captain, he could be famous. Suddenly, a wind blew and stirred the surrounding trees. It seemed like something had passed through. F***ck, were there ghosts around? In the dark there were ghosts coming and going? Stalker trembled and moved forward even quicker. Wang Zheng had rushed forward by tens of meters, and was only running faster. Wang Zheng's movement was indeed ghostly. The surrounding trees were the tool for his long-distance jumps from time to time, allowing him to constantly advance quickly. At this time, Wang Zheng felt that his body was finally in a state of recovery. The first stage of fatigue began to pass by with the accelerated activity. His body's heat was rising. The feeling was very comfortable and felt invigorating. Although this was just a man-made satellite, it had formed a small cycle of nature, quite like that on Earth. Wang Zheng could feel that his surroundings were becoming more and more clear and the darkness was disappearing, and it had little impact on him. While the other people were obstructed in the dark environment, the speed of Wang Zheng only increased. The 5 elements. Now that Wang Zheng remembered, he had actually heard it from his father a long time ago. He said that the 5 elements of the body are the same as the building blocks of the universe, as the universe too had only these 5 elements. In fact, there were many different understandings about this, but he admired this explanation. At that point, Wang Zheng refuted it. This classification was not appropriate. Although there was a sea on Earth, it did not exist on a lot of other planets, but his father did not explain why. Now Wang Zheng understood, this was not the literal meaning. The 5 elements were spiritual and not to be taken in a literal sense. Taros was shocked because his record of the fastest lap was broken. In fact, there was a madman who was catching up crazily. Who was it? The abnormal Lear? Achilles? Not likely. These 2 men should be always following behind him. There was someone who could run so fast in this bunch of people? Not only that, although this person just increased his speed, he was being followed by another person who was also abnormally fast. Who was it this time? Taros also started using his full strength. If he got overtaken at the last point, it would be like getting up early but coming to work late, something just too shameful. At this time, a lot of people felt their power awakening. The more they exerted their physical strength, the more power was grasped from their potential in their genes. When it was almost time for completion, their power would invariably break out. Burst strength differed from person to person. Luo Fei was in the top 10. The fatty had just refreshed the record for fastest lap, but it did not take long for it to be broken. Which crazy man was running so fast? And that person was much faster than him. Wang Zheng became faster and faster. Although his body was dashing toward the front, his whole body had entered an ethereal state. Even he himself did not expect this. He had only reached this realm in his dreams. While dashing, he became one with nature, feeling the vitality of life and the power of nature. The stress from fatigue and from the increased speed which had been accumulated had been released. It was like his spirit had suddenly been released. The experience from some time ago had also helped boost his understanding. The 5 elements were like 5 invisible naughty wizards dominating the world. In the past, he could only feel their presence, but now Wang Zheng seemed to be able to see them. Wang Zheng understood that he had taken a step forward towards an improvement in his understanding. Unfortunately, the space city was too small. The cycle of nature was not complete and he could not understand the elements completely. However, Earth was too large and that too posed a problem. It seemed as though it might not be so easy to form a complete understanding of the elements. Wang Zheng did not know the uproar which his swift speed had brought about. Damn, who is this? Is he mad? What's that speed? Is this guy driving a car? I didn't know that there was such a master hidden in this group. Isn't he tired? Not only the general students noticed this, but Lear and the others also noted that person's performance. Achilles was a little surprised. It seemed that he had underestimated this group of participants. There truly were crouching tigers and hidden dragons. Things were getting interesting. Lear got a little surprised for a moment. A figure emerged in his heart and his mouth had a trace of a meaningful smile. He was planning to accelerate, but he suddenly decided against it. Stalker clenched his teeth. He wanted to keep his position. He had come to this point, so how could he give up now? Fatty Fei also ran about wildly. He was not afraid of losing face for himself, but he could not lose face for Lear. This was Fatty's dignity. Anyone could look down on him, but he couldn't let Lear look down on him. A flying Fatty was dashing forward. His footwork was not much worse than Wang Zheng's. When he was running, he used both his hands and feet. It seemed like he didn't have formal training, so it was done entirely by his instincts. Although it was wild, it was extremely coordinated. Now that it was the last moment, many people had shown their real abilities. Zhang Shan and others looked at the map and the sudden change of speed of the numerous dots on it, while laughing and crying. This shouldn't be called IG training, they should call it a monster training camp. Zhang Shan had been really discouraged once, but that feeling had passed. Since he had persisted this far, he really felt that he could hold up even in the face of even more difficult training. Having such a result from only a few months of formal training, he believed he had been able to live up to the expectations of his own teammates. Wang Zheng was just too fearsome. Just as he thought this, he felt movement behind him. Wang Zheng had appeared. Really? I have been lapped already? Wang Zheng waved his hand and rushed past. The three people looked at each other with confusion. Meng Tian's eyes showed a trace of admiration and a little confusion. His melee combat strength was very strong, his physical strength was also very good. Didn't he just go through basic training? He heard Yi Zhisu say that he just practiced by his own, but how could general practice push him this far? I think Wang Zheng should be the captain, Zhang Runan said. So do I agree too. In the first stage, under the leadership of Wang Zheng, when the conditions were not ideal for everyone, they still successfully killed the Queen Zerg. Although they all felt lucky, every step was stable. Where did luck come into play? And in the distribution of personnel, everyone had played to their own strengths so that they could complete the task with no damage to themselves. In the eyes of others, it seemed like luck, but wasn't it their strength? Just because Wang Zheng was not famous. We should also speed up. We can't lose face for the captain, Zhang Shan said. No problem for us, are you okay? Zhang Runan asked. What a joke, you asked if a man was okay. Taking big steps, student Zhang ran forward. Another hour had passed and the sun began to rise. Yet at this moment the strongest wave of people had begun to gather. There was no more than one lap left. The horns of the final decisive battle had sounded. First were Taros and Achilles. There was not much distance between the two. The third was Lai Xin and the fourth was Luo Fei. This little fatty had even jumped up to fourth place, which was probably something no one had even imagined. Dong Xiaoxia and those people, when they saw Fatty, they only thought going through their minds was that he was being lapped again. The fifth was Stalker. The swimming part was very time and strength consuming. At the same time, this was the biggest advantage Stalker had as he could swim fast and had high endurance. The sixth was Lear. Lear? No one knew what he was thinking. You could see he was not exerting himself, but didn't he want to be a captain? The seventh was Pai Xiaoxiu. During the final stage of the sprint, he was the fastest among the 8 stars. Although the other people's speed was not slow, the strength of the moon still placed them as the first group. Eighth was Rastin despite the fact that he was not good at running. After all, his strength was his forte. The ninth was Lin Ruofeng, the second strongest among the Martians. He looked weak. Unlike most Martians, but he had a good foundation. The 10th was Wang Zheng. Student Wang had surprisingly gotten into the top 10. Although he had fallen behind by a lot since the start, his speed was amazing and he was catching up. While the others were slowing down in the dark, he was accelerating. The first group had entered the final fight. One more swim through the water and then a short sprint on land would lead to the finish line. At the finish line, Meng Ao and the others were waiting. At this moment, it was clear that it was more meaningful to witness the scene personally. The 3 generals also started betting amongst themselves. Lai Wuqing and Dramok, of course, bet on their own people that they would win. Only Meng Ao felt depressed. Lear did not have the intention to fight, hence had nothing to say, and he could only be quiet. Achilles had caught up with Taros. Taros clenched his teeth. This damn kid, couldn't he just lose for once? Achilles, this time, I will defeat you, haha. Can you even defeat me? Achilles was always so confident. He had never been afraid to challenge anyone. He welcomed any strong challengers. Taros was angry indeed. Although the 5 people were equally famous, in Academy X, no one had ever defeated Achilles. Otherwise, this guy would not have gotten the title of the Sun God. Taros could not stand this overly arrogant guy. It was as if he was born to be superior. If we compare our sheer speed, you are not as good as me. Do you dare to bet against me? Taros said. No problem. What do you want to bet with? Whoever loses will quit the competition and support the other, Taros said. Then you can wait to be my subordinate. Achilles laughed and instantly passed by Taros with a person's width distance between them. The madmen began to show their madness. Taros followed Achilles closely, but the distance didn't close. Lai Xin had a fiery sense of determination. As time went on, the distances between the top 10 decreased. The final battle will be decided by their speed in the sea. This portion of the sea was going to slow a lot of people down, so whoever swam the fastest would win. Luo Fei had an anguished look. He performed well on land, but he felt awkward in the water. It was not to say that he was weak in the water, but rather this was not his forte. But at this point in time, he could only clench his teeth and carry on. Lear, Stalker, and Pai Xiaoxiu came within view of each other. The coast was just up ahead and soon they would be in the water. The 4 people in front had already begun to cross the sea. Another silhouette came into view. That was not Luo Feng, neither was it Rastan. Who was coming towards them? Was that Wang Zheng? Wang Zheng had caught up. Hadn't this kid been lapped? Stalker could not care less as the water was his domain. Plop, plop, plop. The sounds of people jumping into the water were heard before Wang Zheng jumped in too. The feeling of the sea against his body was wonderful. Once in the water, Wang Zheng shot through it like an arrow. Wang Zheng overtook Pai Xiaoxiu in an instant. Pai Xiaoxiu was stunned. Someone who had been lapped was actually this determined to perform at the end. Had he found courage after being shamed? Stalker was surprised to find the waters behind him surging. F*C King Hell. Someone was actually chasing after him. What audacity! While rampaging forward, Stalker discovered that the person behind him was not struggling for air at all. You dare to challenge me? I'll outlast you as you suffocate in the water. That was Stalker's ability. It was not to say that he did not need to come up for air, as under strenuous exercise, even he would still require oxygen, merely that he was able to outlast others. Both of them were like flying fish. They had superb speed. 10 minutes had passed, and under such a high-speed situation, Stalker started to feel breathless and had trouble keeping up the pace. But the person behind him did not seem to have this problem. Stalker started to feel dizzy in his head. He bit down on his tongue and tried to carry on, but his mouth started to foam up from the lack of oxygen. If he carried on like this, he would actually be putting himself at a huge risk. He swallowed his pride and went up for air, gasping hard. He could see the other figure speeding towards him. Who the F*CK was that? Stalker continued on, but once his oxygen was spent, he could no longer keep up and had to take a breath of air first. At this moment, Lear also overtook Stalker. Stalker would not dare to complain if it was Lear as his strength had already been proven. Achilles and Taros were directly competing with each other, and Lai Xin had caught up. It was like she was a mermaid, adept and agile in the water while coupled with an otherworldly beauty. This environment was not the forte of the Martians. It could be even considered a weakness, but it seemed like Lai Xin had managed to find a way around it. Holy cow, a woman was capable of anything when she wanted to win. But Achilles was not using his full strength yet. At this time there was another commotion at the back. Someone else had caught up, and that person had directly overtaken Lai Xin. Lai Xin was stunned. Where the F*CK did this person come from? Was he someone who had been lapped but eager to prove himself at the end? Achilles looked through the darkness and saw that it was Wang Zheng who was coming towards them at high speeds. Taros also felt that this was bizarre. This guy had already been lapped and yet he was outshining everyone else. Achilles had begun to completely ignore Taros and he moved towards him. After a few minutes, Wang Zheng had already caught up. Wang Zheng began to pick up more and more speed. Achilles' speed also started to pick up. Taros attempted to increase his speed too but just could not do it physically. While Wang Zheng appeared to not need to come up for oxygen, Achilles, on the other hand, had to come up for air. Yet even then, his speed was comparable to Wang Zheng's. The distance between the both of them and the others started to grow larger and larger. They were both in a deadlock for first place. Taros was furious. What he hated about that bastard Achilles was not that he was strong but rather that he looked down on others. What about the duel that was agreed upon? Taros was upset that he was falling behind. However, he knew that he had no chance of catching up to the both of them. The gaze in Achilles' eyes grew more intense. Lear's lack of care made him feel helpless, but he knew that Lear was doing it on purpose. However, he could not reveal his own intentions. If he did and Lear took notice, it would be bad for him. This was not the first time they had crossed paths, and Achilles was very clear on this. Training always felt too boring, but this time he did not expect such an interesting person to appear. It looked like killing the Queen Zerg was not just a stroke of luck for him. From afar, the speed of the two of them was dumbfounding. Many people had arrived on the shore to await the arrival of the first person. F***ck, who dared to compete with Achilles? Is it Lear? It is not Lear, he is at the back with Taros. Now Lear, Taros, and Lai Shin were getting closer to each other in terms of distance as they relaxed slightly. They had apparently lost the chance of taking first place. If they could not achieve first place, everything else was meaningless to them. At this level, everything else besides first place was worthless. Both Achilles and Wang Zheng appeared to have dashed out of the water at the same time. Although their entire bodies were drenched, it seemed like they were not affected at all by their previous exertions. Their footsteps were steady and their speed was shocking. Achilles was moved. It did not matter that his opponent had been lapped, but to still have this much energy at this point in time was shocking. His opponent did not have ability X nor was he a member of an influential family. Wang Zheng also observed Achilles. This person's movements were too perfect. There was no wastage of energy. His physical condition and mental focus had been maintained throughout the race. He lived up to his reputation, and he was no easy opponent. Both of them increased their speed and departed the beach towards the endpoint. Su Yan, are you sure Wang Zheng has not been lapped? Dramok asked. Reporting, yes, General, he started to exert his strength at dawn, and his speed was shocking. He clocked the fastest lap timing when the others had already slowed down. Looks like he adapted to the dark environment pretty well, Su Yan said. Meng Ao laughed. Although he didn't have ability X, he relied on his basic skills. This kid was something, but against Achilles, Wang Zheng held no advantage over him. Although he did not know what Lear was up to, at least there was someone representing Earth's strength. Although both were in a deadlock, Achilles did not use his ability. He also did not intend to use it, as he had never shunned away from a direct challenge. Wang Zheng paid no attention to this confrontation. He was in the midst of regulating his own pace, and this opportunity to train himself was too good to pass up. He did not yearn for the fame. Once he had other concerns, he would immediately lose focus of such a wonderful state. Even so, Wang Zheng's speed was very fast. With the endpoint in sight, Achilles prepared to increase his speed. It was obvious that Achilles still had strength, but when he observed his opponent, he discovered that the latter's attention was wandering. He was not focused on the confrontation between the both of them. Before long, both Wang Zheng and Achilles crossed the finish line at the same time. Standing at the finish line, Wang Zheng exited from that wonderful state. It was a pity, but this sort of state had a time limit. He entered that state when he started sprinting, and it ended as soon as he stopped. Achilles looked at Wang Zheng curiously. If Wang Zheng did not dispute for first place, then neither would he. Dramok let out a sigh. Achilles was good, but sometimes he was just too competitive. This was a characteristic of the people from the moon. It could be considered a boon at times and a bane during others. False reputations should also be taken note of. This was important for the future development of the youths. A title which was obtained too easily would never be treasured well. Meng Ao had a serious look on his face, but his gaze showed a hint of amusement. The highly ranked Lear had to contend with Wang Zheng now. These go-getters were definitely going to make things interesting. Wang Zheng did not have much emotion at the finishing line. He stood quietly on the side and reviewed his own experience. No one taught him how to achieve the breakthrough, and he initially had no idea at all. This was why he treasured this experience so much. Bonehead once said that a lot of people reached this juncture and could not achieve a breakthrough. Those people never became super warriors. Having seen the ability X in action, Wang Zheng knew how magical it was, but he did not know what changes would take place after he achieved a breakthrough. The primordial regression technique's second stage was not much different. As long as he had a platform, he would not fear any opponent. Achilles's list of rivals finally had an additional name. Taros and the others soon arrived. Lear had a smile on his face. Lai Xin looked at Wang Zheng hesitantly. Taros had a gloomy face. Taros was one of those people who took themselves seriously, believing that first place belonged to him. All four of their gazes fell on Wang Zheng, but he paid no attention to them. When the three generals arrived, everyone stood assembled. It was also nothing to be happy about nor worth celebrating, this was just training. Luo Fei was the sixth to arrive. The fatty gave everyone a surprise. Everyone's gazes fell on Lear, especially those who had questioned him at the beginning. No matter who looked at him, Lear gave them a smile. The next wave of 8 people arrived, their timings very close to each other. Everyone who saw Wang Zheng and the fatty were stunned. There was no mistaking it, those two had been lapped, so how could they be standing here now? But upon seeing the majestic generals, no one dared to speak, they all quickly assembled and stood upright. After an hour, all 50 students had arrived. Meng Tian and the others had also arrived. Both of Zhang Shan's legs barely had any strength left, but he continued to stand. This was a sign of his endurance. Every student that completed the training was standing with a proud look on their face. Lai Wuqing stepped forth and cast his gaze over everyone. So you think you're good? The audience felt that something was not right. This was only supposed to take half a day and yet all of you needed a whole day and night. Are you not ashamed of yourselves? Lai Wuqing's cold gaze swept over the audience. They were all stunned. Was it really meant to be completed in half a day? How was that possible? But no one dared to speak up. Su Yan, the sun has risen. It's time for the next phase of training, the voice spoke ruthlessly. Yes, General. Su Yan saluted and turned around. Attention, those assembled, alert, execute half a turn to your right, march. Everyone was stunned. What the F***ck? Were they being sent to die? No one complained, and no one had any strength left to. It seemed like they had underestimated the intensity of IG training. Just this difficulty alone was sufficient to eliminate a batch of students. Zhang Shan could not feel his body anymore. He really wanted to give up earlier, but he thought that completing this would allow him some rest. But it seemed like the training was going to carry on regardless. But when he saw Wang Zheng, Meng Tian, and Zhang Runnan's determination, he felt ashamed. Because a soldier had to obey every order. This was a true soldier, discipline was always first. Questioning, this sort of word would never appear in a soldier's dictionary. It was not that they had no souls but rather they had the souls of soldiers. To be able to train alongside such people, it was indeed an honor. While Wang Zheng and the others were training hard, on the other side of the distant galaxy, there was a story of a wild romance going on. This was the busiest part of the Milky Way Alliance, the Andromeda Galaxy. In this location lay the most famous empire of all, the Aslan Empire. Both large and small space stations surrounded a blue planet, connected to the planet's surface by metal structures. All of the merchant ships from the Milky Way hastily unloaded specialties obtained from all around the galaxy in these space stations, and when their payments were received, the merchants rushed off to obtain more. It was as if the entire Milky Way was theirs for the taking. It was in this planet where the core of the Aslan Empire lay. It was the origin of the expansion of mankind's influence, an area where the entire galaxy looked up to. It held a magnificent capital, full of bustling activity. The people worked efficiently and without error. Every citizen's face showed almost eternal elegance. All this hailed from the Aslanians' self-confidence. as they lived in the galaxy's greatest and strongest country. This was truly the center of the galaxy, a title well deserved. The Aslan Royal College was the most important location in the capital. The defense here was even tighter than at the palace of the Aslan Empire. The most elite royal knights and 2 full brigades were stationed here for the long term. The greatest scientists in the empire, perhaps even the universe, could be found in this location, whether it was in physics, biology, planetary ecology, and all other aspects. The vast majority of the most advanced technology research started and was developed here. Technology was the root of a strong country, and for the Aslan Empire it was clearly so. In the imperial capital, the Royal College took up a vast amount of space. In the college, students came and went, all wearing different clothes. There were many students from other countries as well, such as Atlantis and the like. Bordia, congratulations, your electromagnetic evolution theory has been verified. The University Science and Technology Contribution Award, which is given out once every 4 years, will certainly have your name on it. Oh, Sir Aurora. Thank you for your praise. But instead of the Science and Technology Contribution Award, I would have much rather preferred to get the Aslan Empire's Knight's Medal. The youth called Bordia was rather thin, but he had handsome facial features comparable to a god. When he was talking, his sharp ears would twitch from time to time, and his faint smile exuded a charm that appealed to both men and women. Aurora, on the other hand, was a typical Aslanian aristocrat. He was tall and handsome, wearing elegant clothes. Every part of his clothes looked carefully curated. Whether it was the watch, the tie, his top, or his trousers, this elegance he held was not something people were born with, but a natural behavior accrued after spending many years in the presence of similar people. This was Aslan's aristocracy. Even the galaxy's greatest actor could not replicate that feeling that came from one's soul. In the entertainment industry, there was a saying that only an Aslanian could act as an Aslanian. You have won the Patriots' Medal of the Atlantis Republic. The Knights of Aslan, compared to someone with your qualifications, are just nobodies. What Aurora said seemed sensible. Every word he said sounded attractive to people's ears. On the other hand, an incomparable heroic temperament could be felt exuding from Bordia, an individual from the mighty Atlantis. A nobody? Then why has the Knights Hall not approved my application yet? Aurora revealed a bitter smile. Bordia was too serious. Kiki, that medal generally isn't granted to non-Aslanian individuals. You are talking about the general situation. I understand what you are saying, and this is what I like about you Aslanians. Sometimes I even feel that Aslan seems more like Atlantis than Atlantis itself, the once brilliant and brave Atlantis. As the two people talked, the people around them could also be seen engaging in their own conversations in hushed tones. All of them were just standing there. Obviously it was not because they had nothing to do, but they were waiting for something or someone. The truth was that there was only one person who could make the people of the Royal College stop caring about time and wait quietly. It was Aina Aslan, the first princess of the Aslan Empire. The princess had disappeared for some time after the adult ceremony, and that had surprised the Royal College students. Everyone knew that after the adult ceremony, the princess would have to enter the Royal College to study, as this was the royal tradition. Before the adult ceremony, she received a private education by the royal family's teachers, and after the adult ceremony, she would study in the Royal College. The royal family was not an unapproachable existence. On the contrary, they needed to stay in contact with the country's elite and guide them. Bong, ancient bells rang melodiously. This was the sound of classes ending. The two people that were talking stopped and their eyes turned to a building not so far away. A few people came out, men and women filled with unspeakable self-confidence. They whispered when they talked and made no trace of noise. Their walking pace was measured as they walked out in an orderly fashion towards the two. When the crowd approached the place, the two stood, then the crowd slowed down a bit and most of them even stopped walking. At the sight of this, the two who had been chatting made their way down the steps towards the crowd. The crowd separated and made a salute. A beautiful figure slowly walked out from the crowd. Her face and her temperament were truly extraordinary. Aina, the light of the empire, the future queen of Aslan, the current crown princess. Bordia, Aurora, why are you here? Aina smiled and walked towards them. Every step exuded the grace of an Aslanian princess. Her beauty and her temperament caused the gazes of the Aslanian people to become heated. This was the crown princess of Aslan. Princess. Aurora just smiled and raised his hands, giving a standard Aslanian knight's salute. He did not explain why they were here. Bordia just smiled. The unique temperament to the people of Atlantis could now be felt in full force. It was as if he had an eye-catching spirit-snatching aura. I came to ask the princess about the impact of energy transmission in the universe which you talked about in the classroom last time. Aina faintly smiled. I just heard this theory from a friend and borrowed it. I could not understand it well enough. Bordia slightly raised his eyebrows. Oh, who could this friend be? He is not in Aslan right now. The curvature of her mouth made Aurora squint his eyes slightly. Compared to the smile just now, the princess now showed a happiness from her heart. Ever since the princess had been to Earth, real smiles like this appeared more and more often in front of everyone. Bordia seemed very disappointed. They conversed politely for a short moment before he took his leave. Aurora then said, Princess Weyan is at Stonehenge. Aina shook her head and sighed. She's probably disturbing the peace, and I apologize for her actions. This is my duty. Aurora shifted his posture into that of a guardian's position before politely guiding Aina towards Stonehenge. Aina nodded. She was accustomed to these rules and etiquette from when she was young. It was instilled into her bones. Yet this time, her mind thought of an unrestrained individual who knew nothing about rules and the helpless smile he had on his face when he was using his last bit of money to pay for a stranger's debt. He was not handsome, but she still thought of him from time to time before feeling happy secretly. Aurora's eyes blinked as the princess blanked out. Her star-like eyes couldn't hide any deep thoughts from him. Earth, what was so nostalgic about that primitive place? In the Stonehenge entertainment area. There was an entertainment area meant for the serving Aslan royal family. It was safe and it paid emphasis on privacy. It was also the most preferred place for the royal family members to chat and invite guests. Your Royal Highness. Upon seeing Aina, a petite figure jumped up from the sofa, bowed, and raised her hands. A pair of starry eyes flashed with vigor. Don't be naughty. Aina smiled, stretched out her arm, and embraced Lin Weyan. Naughty, here had a different meaning. Lin Weyan hung on Aina's shoulder with her whole body. How am I naughty? He. Aina just looked at her deeply. Well, okay. I give up. I have to say that Aurora is a really good choice. As one of Aslan's aristocrats, he is not only polite and is known as a sword master, his father is the Duke, who is an imperial descendant. The rarest part is that he's also very handsome. Since you appreciate him so much, I will leave him to you. I do not want to. Lin Weyan covered her mouth. Talking before thinking was really not a good habit. Aina only faintly smiled. Her star-like eyes looked as if they were saying, you didn't want him, so you pushed him to me? If a mere swordsmaster is not good enough, how about the sword magician Oz? His strength is not below Aurora's, and he is from an ordinary family and is determined to rise. A princess dating a commoner. It would truly be a romantic Cinderella story, and it would certainly cause a sensation throughout the empire. As long as we give him a little bit of territory, he will surely become the first marshal of the empire. We have to win over such talent to our side, Aina laughed. Yes, said Lin Weyan while nodding like a chicken pecking at rice grains. Well, maybe I can talk to my aunt. Someone seems too leisurely and free. Perhaps finding a reliable boyfriend in advance may make her act more like a princess. Hey, I was being kind. I'm not an adult yet. Lin Weyan jumped up. Aina just stretched out her hand and rubbed Lin Weyan's head hard. Since this is an adult's business, children should not interfere. I'm not a child. Well, okay, I'm young. I'm a child. It's too early to look for a boyfriend for me, as there are 100 harms and no benefit. Lin Weyan stuck out her little tongue, thinking to herself, it's all Wang Zheng's fault. How long had her originally cute and sweet sister hung out with him? This little lamb was dyed black. By the way, don't say I didn't help you. I know that you have been very busy recently and certainly would not notice these things, but your Mr. You-know-who, his name was in the student science and technology contribution list. I don't know how he got mixed into it. Seems like the standards for these things have been low recently, Lin Weyan could not help but say. Aina finally revealed a pleasant look, then she embraced Wheein and gently kissed her. My good sister, rest assured that in the future, when you meet someone you like, I will definitely support you. Hee hee, the person I like must be famous across the galaxy, at the top of the world, unparalleled. Although the little princess was young, even young girls had their own standards.